we're going to look at the most basic ways of making a selection using these three sets of selection tools we have here in the toolbar. These are all great for starting a selection or making a quick throwaway selection. You shouldn't really dismiss them either when you're creating a more sophisticated selection, because they can help you modify an alpha channel. The thing is to know what to use and when to use it. We're going to start out with the Magic Wand tool, which is a really simple tool for selecting smooth areas or areas of a block color, such as a colorama, a background, etc. Now, most often when we think of selecting something, we think of selecting a figure rather than a background, but more often than not we select the background because the background tends to be a lot easier, smoother, simpler. I'm going to set this to the default tolerance, which is 32. And one click here will pick up a lot of pixels, and you'll see here the marching ants that cover the background and around the hair, around the edges of the background as well. Now, if we look closer, you'll see here that it hasn't actually picked up the pixels in between here. So we're going to add to the selection holding down the Shift key, which is this modifier key that always helps you to add to selections. Holding down the Shift key again, I'm clicking in this little corner here, and it will have picked up the edges as well. To add in a little area like this is really an area where the Magic Wand isn't so strong, but we'll try. Shift key down, and you see a little plus sign there as well, don't you? Now, I've done one click too far and it's picked up all these other pixels. I can then press Command Z, that's one undo, and it takes it back to the step before. So we still have our selection. You've just got to remember to do that straight away. Now I'm going to set the tolerance a bit lower to maybe 10 and try my luck again. Shift and click in this corner, and now you can see it picks up not so many pixels, but sort of gets in between the hair there. Right, that's enough. I'm going to set it to Command 0 and show you this in Quick Mask. I'm pressing now Q to get into the Quick Mask. And that shows us a selection that's very easy, very quick. You can then modify it later on. It's a bit hard on the edges, but it does the job. I'm pressing Q now to get out of the Quick Mask. I'm going to deselect this whole selection to just move on and show you some other ways of doing it. Command D. Okay, now I'm changing from the Magic Wand to the Quick Selection tool, which sits with the Magic Wand. In the options here, we'll start with the the new selection button, and I'm going to drag a little selection here in the top corner. As you can see, it didn't pick up as many pixels as the Magic Wand, and what it's done, it's snapped straight away automatically to this Add to the Selection button. So it's in this other mode now. Dragging this, I can add it to the selection and on the side here, but as you can see, it's done a very good job here. Now if I zoom in again and try and catch this little difficult corner here, you can see there it's done a fairly good job. So I'm going to leave it at that and look at that in the Quick Mask. So we've achieved more or less the same result here. Worked it a little bit differently, but it's pretty much the same result as we got with the Magic Wand on this particular image. I think you may find that if you have a lot of detail in the image, this will act very differently from the Magic Wand. I'm going to now deselect again and look at a very simple selection tool. I often use the rectangular marquee to just make a very quick throwaway selection. For example, if I want to make a local color adjustment and I want to see the difference between the adjustment and the areas around it. For this one, I'm just going to drag a square selection here, and you can see obviously she's not square, so that wouldn't be our tool of choice. But if I wanted to, I could just make a very quick selection of a subject, and using the Shift key I can add to this selection. So the Shift key is universal, it always adds to the selection. Something else it does, if I wanted to cut out a square, an absolute square of this image, maybe to crop it, I could hold down the Shift before I start dragging, and as I start dragging here you can see it's a perfect square. I'm now going to show you the elliptical marquee tool, and if you drag a marquee with this just to get a rough selection of the face, you can see here it's a little bit oval. When you use it, you can think of a square disguised as a circle, so you can control this a little better. Now if I want to move the selection, this is before I've let go of the stylus on the tablet, I'm going to hold the space bar down and I'm going to shift it a little bit up here. If I then want to add to a selection, I can then shift and add to it. The lasso tool is fine for making a really rough selection. I'm going to start here making a selection around the model. I'll press the Q to get into quick mask so you can actually see the selection, and here we could work it further. We could, I mean, if you want to make a selection like this, if you want to modify a selection in the quick mask with a brush tool here at 100% opacity and flow, a soft brush, you can go in and paint the edges so that you get just a very small overlap. That would be one way of modifying the selection, but of course it would just be hard work. There are easier ways to do this with this particular image. So I'm going to press Q again just to show you how that changed the selection. This is the polygonal lasso tool. It's literally a join the dots tool. So you can see here I'm just clicking away, and obviously not very suited for this subject. It would be good if you have a subject that's maybe a house or something square, if you want to cut that out. Now you can see here when I get to the top here where I started, we get a little join symbol. So clicking on that, you get the marching ants. You should be aware though that, I'm just going to deselect here, you should be aware that when you're halfway through, you haven't actually got a selection. So pressing Command D to deselect will do you no good, but if you press Escape, it goes away. Let's now look at the magnetic lasso tool. This one's quite interesting. I'm going to zoom into 100%, which I usually do when I use this. I also make sure that I'm in the full screen mode so I can move this image wherever I want to. I'm going to just start at the top, and you can see here that it snaps to the edge. Well, it doesn't 100%. You could see maybe that it missed a bit there higher up. If you move further out, it will still want to snap to the edge, but it loses a bit. So I'm going to use my backspace key, tap, 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 and tap, to get back to the point of origin and moving on towards the edge. Now once I get to the edge, it might be a bit tricky, so I'm just going to Command minus, 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 and minus again. I'm using my left hand on the side of the keyboard, going around the edges here, and remembering of course not to expect too much from it. When it comes to picking up hair edges, it's not the ideal tool. None of these are. And following the edge around, trying to go quickly but not too quickly. I put a point down here. What you may not have noticed is that I'm not actually putting these points down myself. The points are being made by the tool, but for corners I tend to put a point in. And let me just go astray a little bit so I really have the chance to show you the backspace. Now what could happen is that you've come almost the whole way around, put a lot of work into it, and it goes astray like this. So using the backspace, tap, 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 but not holding it down completely, going back to where you started and just picking it up again. Once we get to the top here, you see a little triangle, which lets you then, if you click on it, you will then have the selection, the marching ants again. The same goes for this tool as the other one, that you haven't actually got a selection until you've joined it up. So the only way to get out of it, or the simplest way to get out of it, is to just press the escape button. I've shown you here some very, very simple tools, and if you choose wisely and master them well, they can help you start some really refined selections using the Quick Mask and Refine Edge. It really pays not to be snobbish about the tools you use for selections, because you'll save a lot of time in the long run if you're flexible.